Joining us live from New York there. Well, with the federal election less than 6 months away, the government has announced a series of employment reforms in a bid to gain the support of electorates. The reforms range from legislated penalty rates and amendment to the right of entry provisions to flexible childcare trials and better monitoring of the 457 visa. For more, we are joined by Joydeep Hor, Managing Principal of specialist law firm People Plus Culture Strategies. Thanks so much for your time, Joydeep. We do appreciate it. First of all, what you make of this move by the government and all these legislative changes?
Well, it's certainly tapping into the Labor supporter base heartland. These are easy win points from a Labor government point of view. I think it's interesting though when you get into the detail of it, a lot of these things are actually not new. When we're talking about something like penalty rates, most employees, certainly employees that are covered by awards, have these terms and conditions well enshrined into their working conditions. When you're talking about something like right of entry for union officials, there's regulation, there's been regulation dealing with that for some time. So they're talking about a little bit of extension of that, which is certainly going to appeal to the union movement. But I just wonder whether this is more about the noise being created about where the Labor Party stands in terms of trying to re-enliven perhaps some of the controversy from the work choices days, given where things are placed politically for them.
Yeah. Do you expect further reforms ahead of the September election? Are we going to hear more noise in this space?
Well, I think there is going to be more noise in this space, but what's interesting is only yesterday or the day before, the government withdrew, for all intents and purposes, its plans to consolidate anti-discrimination laws. Right. And that was seen as quite a step down or a backflip in terms of something that it said that it had been very committed to. We've also seen in recent months that they're talking about introducing a standalone remedy for bullying. So we're seeing a lot of noise in this particular space. My own take on it is that we know that the coalition is unlikely to release any policy details in relation to IR for several months. And I see this as a form of baiting, if you like, of the government to try to get the coalition to make a call on some of these issues. And if there's going to be silence, then I think they're going to try to characterise that as, well, you know, you can't trust what the coalition's going to do, with a view, as I say, to re-enlivening some of the work choices prejudice. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when you look across both platforms, just in terms of your opinion, is it still fair to say that government IR policies are traditionally not as kind to employers when it's on the Labor side of things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you take something like right of entry, it's a small issue, but what the government's talking about doing is to allow, for example, union officials to come and meet employees in the lunchroom. Now, employers take that issue very seriously, and what they say is that, well, if we've got our employees who are having their lunch break, they're entitled to have their lunch break in peace and quiet, and they don't want someone tapping on their shoulder talking to them about union things. The employees who are interested in meeting with the unions, the employers say, well, they'll find a way to do so. But from the union movement point of view, it's actually a very sensitive and important issue from that perspective, or their side of the fence, because they say, well, we need to have exposure to as many different people as we can, because if you don't facilitate us having maximum exposure, then you'll find a way to the employers of ensuring that they never see us. So you can sort of see both sides of the argument, and where the government's calling it is to say, well, we actually are going to facilitate that broader access, and clearly in doing so are playing into the more union-preferred perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the talk about the 457 visa reforms? Because this has been a hot topic. Just talk us through the changes that the government wants to make on this front.
Yeah, I think the government is responding to some quarters who have said that there's some level of abuse and exploitation happening in relation to the 457 visa point. I think that what the government's talking about doing is clamping down on ensuring, through the Fair Work Ombudsman, which is like the industrial relations police person, that there isn't that kind of abuse, and that whatever the pay rates that are required to be provided to people on those visas are being complied with. Now, you would say that that is something that should be happening anyway. If employers are required to comply with obligations, well, they should be required to comply with obligations. So is this as widespread as a problem as the government is currently saying? I'm not quite sure. I'm not seeing it. Certainly there are some quarters, some industries where it is being abused, but that's always going to be the case, whether you're talking about underpayment, not paying the right rates of pay. You know, there are some industries where it's going to be more pronounced than in others.
Okay, Joydeep Hor, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, Kate.
Well, we are going to take you now